It begins with silence. No footsteps, no church bells, no children playing in the streets, just an unbearable stillness in the air. Now imagine this. You live in a small village in Europe. The year is 1347. You've never seen the sea, never heard of Asia, and you believe illness comes from bad smells and sinful thoughts. Then, one morning, 12 ships arrive at the port of Messina in Sicily. The crew? Most of them are already dead. The survivors are coughing blood, their skin covered in dark purple boils, big as apples, black as coal. The people panic. They push the ships away. They pray. But something has already escaped. Something invisible. Something unstoppable. No one could have known. This was the beginning of the end. The Black Death had arrived. And with it, a century of fear, death, and transformation. This is the story they never told you in school. Europe before the plague was a place already teetering on collapse. Cities were growing rapidly. But sanitation? Almost non-existent. Streets were rivers of filth. People dumped chamber pots from windows. Animals roamed free. Pigs, dogs, even rats. Homes were made of wood and straw. Most had no windows, no chimneys, no airflow. Families lived crammed together. 6, 10, even 15 people in one room. The rich lived slightly better, but even kings didn't bathe often. Medical knowledge was a mixture of superstition and nonsense. Doctors believed in the 4 humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. If you were sick, they bled you. If you were dying, they said it was God's will. Hospitals? Rare. Antibiotics? Unthinkable. Understanding of disease? Zero. Religion ruled everything. The church dictated truth. If crops failed, if children died, they said it was because you sinned. Europe wasn't just physically unclean, it was mentally unprepared. For what was coming, it stood no chance. Historians believe it started in Asia, possibly in China, maybe in the mountains of Mongolia. A bacteria called Yersinia pestis began its silent journey, hitching rides in fleas, on rats, through trade caravans. The Silk Road carried it west. Trade ships brought it to Crimea. And from there, it leapt into Europe like a shadow. In October of 1347, 12 ships arrived in Sicily. People were curious. Trade was good, but something was wrong. Dock workers noticed a strange smell. No movement, no shouting, just silence on board. When they boarded, they found horror. The crew was dying. Some already dead. Those still alive were delirious, vomiting blood, their bodies covered in massive black swellings. Local officials immediately forced the ships to leave, but it was too late. The rats had come ashore. So had the fleas. But more than that, the sickness had already spread to sailors, dock workers, priests, merchants. From port to port, city to city, the Black Death moved faster than anything Europe had ever seen, and it was just getting started. We've all heard the story. The plague was carried by rats. Fleas bit the rats and then bit humans. But that's only part of the truth, and maybe not the most important part. Yes, fleas and rats played a role, but recent research tells a darker story. The Black Death moved far too fast for fleas alone to explain. Whole towns infected in days, villages wiped out in a single week. That's not how flea-borne disease behaves. Doctors today believe a deadlier version was at play, pneumonic plague, the kind that spreads through the air. One cough could infect an entire room. A single breath could doom a family. The infection didn't wait. It didn't give warnings. Some people went to sleep and never woke up. Others collapsed in the street. Their skin darkened. Their veins turned black. Blood poured from their mouths, their eyes, even their pores. Children died in their mothers' arms. Priests collapsed mid-sermon. It was as if death had taken form and was walking through the cities. People began to think it was a curse, or a punishment, or maybe the end of days. And for many, it was. When the plague struck, it didn't just kill people. It killed systems. It shattered routines. It turned order into chaos. In the beginning, people tried to help. Priests prayed over the sick. Doctors visited the infected. Families stayed with dying relatives. But as the death toll rose, everything fell apart. Doctors stopped coming. Many fled the cities entirely. Some disguised themselves and escaped in the night. The church, once believed to be the shield of humanity, began to crumble. Monks and priests died faster than they could bury each other. The Pope himself sat between two roaring fires for days, hoping the smoke would protect him. In cities like Florence, 1 out of every 2 people died. Half the population gone in a season. People no longer trusted prayers, no longer trusted doctors, no longer trusted God. Children were abandoned. Wives left husbands. Neighbors locked their doors and left their friends to rot. Entire towns became silent. Shops closed forever. Markets vanished. Villages turned to graveyards. It wasn't just bodies being buried. It was humanity itself. Europe wasn't just dying. It was breaking apart. Desperation breeds madness. And in the 14th century, medicine was madness already. There were no microscopes, no knowledge of bacteria, no science behind treatment, just fear and guesswork. To cure the plague, some doctors bled patients until they fainted. Others prescribed crushed emeralds, ground into powder and drunk in wine. Some forced patients to sniff human waste, believing stronger smells would drive out the poison. One popular cure was applying live chickens to the swellings. The idea? Let the sickness transfer into the bird. The result? Dead chickens. Dead patients. Then there was the beak mask. Plague doctors wore long, bird-like masks filled with herbs and spices. They believed the bad air was the cause, and good smells could fight it. They looked terrifying, like monsters from a dream, but none of it worked. People also turned to the stars. Astrologers blamed alignments of Saturn and Mars. Priests blamed sin. Commoners blamed foreigners and the poor. They wore charms, tied toads to their legs, burned incense, herbs, and sometimes even people. In the end, nothing helped. Those who lived by chance, not medicine. When people are afraid, they look for someone to blame. And the Black Death brought fear unlike anything before it. Rumors spread like fire, that someone had poisoned the wells, that witches had cursed the land, that God was punishing humanity for its sins, and then they turned on the Jews. In hundreds of towns and cities, Jews were accused of starting the plague. No evidence, no trial, just fire, hatred, and blood. Entire Jewish communities were burned alive. In Strasbourg, 2,000 were killed in a single day. In Mainz, Cologne, and Barcelona, families were dragged from their homes and executed in the streets. Others were forced to convert, flee, or die. The plague didn't discriminate, but people did. Even lepers, beggars, and travelers were attacked. If you looked different, spoke another language, or lived outside the village, you were a target. It wasn't just a medical catastrophe, it was a social one. The plague revealed how quickly human beings could become monsters, and how fragile our sense of morality truly is. Every morning, a cart rolled through the streets. Its driver shouted one thing: "Bring out your dead!" Children dragged the bodies of their parents outside. Neighbors left corpses in the alley. Dogs and rats fought over what was left. In the cities, funeral pyres burned day and night. The smoke never cleared. The air was thick with the smell of ash, rot, and sickness. Graveyards overflowed. Priests blessed mass graves filled with hundreds at a time. Some towns dug trenches and filled them until they overflowed. then dug new ones beside them. In the countryside, no one was left to bury the dead. Whole villages disappeared without a sound. People stopped naming their babies. They stopped speaking in full sentences. They stopped dreaming. Noblemen watched their estates collapse. Peasants roamed, desperate and numb. And still, the plague marched on. Even survivors lived in fear. Fear of coughing, fear of crowds, fear of tomorrow. Every candle flickered in shadow. Every cough was a warning, and every day was darker than the last. This was not a story of battlefields. It was a story of beds, homes, and streets, where death lived like a neighbor.